Alright, so now we're going to take a look at a little bit more processing with our array elements by specifically looking at what happens whenever we want to try to copy all of the items in one array into another. So to get started on this, I want to make a note that arrays are actually specialized objects, so we could kind of tell that they were related to classes in some way because we were using that new keyword and we had to include a constructor of some kind. So this tells us that the variables for arrays are actually going to be reference variables. So this is similar to the variables for strings or some of the other classes that we've seen. And these are going to reference objects of the array class. So in this particular example we have right here, the numbers variable initially references an array of size 10, but later references an array of size 5. So whenever we do something like new int size 10, we then change that to say new int size 5. Essentially what's going to happen is numbers will change what it references to. So essentially it will point to one array somewhere else in memory, and then later it will point to a different array somewhere else in memory. So both reference variables, array 1 and array 2, in this next example, these are going to reference the same array in memory. So you see right here we've got our int array called array 1. This is going to be equal to a newly initialized array with the values 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. We then go ahead and create another array. So we're going to declare array 2, and we're going to say that this is equal to array 1. So the idea here is that we want to try to assign the contents that array 1 has to array 2 as well. So we essentially want another array with the values 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. And technically we've kind of achieved that, but not really in the way that we intended to. Since what's going to happen now is array 1 and array 2 are both going to be pointing to the same array in memory. So what this means is that if you change a value in the array using one of these reference variables, this change can be observed using the other reference variable as well. So let's actually take a look at this to see what's happening. So we're going to go ahead and minimize this. Come over here. We'll go ahead and create a new project. So I'll go ahead and make a Java application. For this one, we're going to say copying arrays. Click finish. Let's go ahead and remove the extra comments and clean up the style on this a little bit. And right here, inside of our main method, we'll go ahead and declare those two variables with their different assignments. So we're going to say int array 1 is going to be equal to this newly initialized array with the values 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10 inside of it. So we're going to do that within the curly braces. So we've already initialized each of the individual values. So in this case, we've got 5 different elements for this array at positions 0 through 4. And then on the next line, we're going to go ahead and declare array 2. And when we assign something to this variable, we're going to go ahead and just assign array 1. And so now what's going to happen is these two things are going to reference the same array in memory. So they're going to be referencing the array with these 5 items inside of it. So then if I go ahead and change one of these values, say I take array 1, and I go ahead and grab the value at position 1. So I grab this 4 right here. And say this is now going to be equal to something like, say, 5. If I go ahead and do a print statement right here, and I go ahead and print out that same position, but with array 2. So we're using array 2, this one right here. We're going to go ahead and print out this item inside of it. So ideally, if these were two completely separate and distinct arrays in their own spots in memory, then doing this should give me the value 4. But because of the way that I've done the assignment here, since they both reference the same array in memory, changing 1, both of them are going to see that. So if I run this, I'm going to see 5 as my output for this. So ideally what I need to do is come up with a way to take all of the items in one of these arrays and put those into the other, rather than just accidentally copying the reference to them. So we come back over here. We can also see visually what is going on right here. So we've got our array somewhere in memory, kind of placed at the bottom of this example here. We then have our two reference variables, array 1 and array 2, and I show how they both reference, or they both point to, the same array in memory. So they're both going to see the same little piece of data. So if I change anything inside of that using one of them, then the other is going to see that as well. So instead, what I want to do is come up with my own little kind of formulation for it. So we're going to have a little algorithm that we have right here that allows us to copy the items from one array into another. So for array 1 and array 2 to reference separate arrays in memory, so for these two reference variables to reference their own separate arrays, each individual value from one array must be copied into the other. In order to accomplish this, you must first make sure you have constructed two separate arrays. So array 1 is going to reference an array with the specified initial values, so we've already got that set up for us. Array 2 is going to reference a newly constructed array of the same length as array 1. So obviously, if we want to copy all the items from one into the other, that would naturally mean that the lengths of these two arrays must be identical. So we're going to go ahead and create a new int array. We're going to be using the new keyword and the constructor for arrays, and we're going to specify that the length of this array, when we first construct it, should match the length of array 1 by getting its length field. So we're going to minimize this. Let's go ahead and do that first step now. So right here, instead of assigning array 1 to array 2, which as we've seen just copies the reference and not the actual array itself, we'll go ahead and say new int, and then right here for the size, we're going to do array1.length. We'll go ahead and save that. And so now we've got array 2, this newly constructed array. It currently has 5 items that we can place into it. Because we haven't specified anything for them yet, it's just going to be 5 zeros. So we've seen a little bit about this before with our introduction to arrays. So then the next thing I need to go ahead and do is actually start taking the items from array 1 and putting those into array 2. So if we check again right here, so we can see right here we can go ahead and copy the values from array 1 into array 2 using a for loop. And so this is going to be an example of another one of those cases where we cannot use the enhanced for loop. So this is an example of the fourth point, the one that I was going to address a little bit later, when we are dealing with copying our arrays. Because of the fact that we have to deal with two arrays at the same time, array 1 and array 2, because of that, we can't really use the enhanced for loop. So we're going to go ahead and do the same thing now in our program. So coming back over here, so we're going to go ahead and say for int index equal to 0. So we know that we still want to start from position 0 since we're going from the beginning to the end of these arrays. We then want to go ahead and say that as long as this index is less than, and at this point it doesn't necessarily matter which of these two arrays you use, they both have the same length. We'll just go ahead and use array 1. Say array 1.length. And then we're going to go ahead and just increment the array each time, or the index each time. And then right here, what we want to go ahead and do is we want to go ahead and take a particular position from array 2, and we're going to assign to it the value at that same position in array 1. So at position 0, we want to go ahead and get this 2 that is in array 1, and we want to assign that to position 0 of array 2. So essentially what we're doing is we're saying array 2 at the position of the index, which is currently 0, and we're going to assign to it the value at the same position of array 1. So the first time we go through this, we're going to take array 2, position 0, we're going to assign to that the value at array 1, position 0, which is going to be this 2 right here. The next time we go through this, we're going to increment index, so it's going to be 1. So we're going to take array 2, its position 1, we'll assign to that array 1 the value at its position 1, which is going to be this 4 right here. So we're going to put that into array 2. Next, we'll go ahead and increment index again, so we move to the next position. So that's going to be at 2, so we're going to say array 2, position 2, assign to it array 1, position 2, that's going to be this 6 right here. And then just kind of repeat this process as we step through every one of the elements of this array. So now, if we go ahead and change one of these items like we did right here, so we've got array 1 at position 1, we're going to change its value to 5, and then we go ahead and print that out right here. From array 2, Well, now because they're two completely independent arrays, each in their own space in memory, making a change to array 1 will not affect array 2 anymore. So now when we get this 4 that we were expecting at position 1 of array 2, we see that we actually get the value 4 printing to the console. Okay, so at this point, this is going to wrap up everything for taking a look at how to copy arrays, where essentially we want to make sure that we're getting a complete copy of one array into the other, constructing a new array whose size matches the first array's size, and then using a for loop to add those items one at a time. Getting into the next video, we're going to take a look at how to actually start using our arrays in methods. Primarily, we'll start off by looking at how to actually pass arrays into our methods, so how to use them in the parameters